I want to start by defining service. Now, hopefully, most of you can recognize this character on the screen behind me. Lumiere is by far one of my favorite Disney characters from by far one of my favorite Disney movies, Beauty and the Beast. In fact, in a recent conversation with my mother, we were talking about that moment that he has to shine, right, in by far my favorite Disney song, Be Our Guest, which I think after a few drinks, maybe some of us would be even inclined to sing at karaoke, right? In Be Our Guest, my mom was talking to me about it. She's like, you know, Joss, this kind of reminds me, it illustrates that thing that you were talking about, which is a very transactional relationship between the server and the guest, right? It's very one-sided. Lumiere is kind of bragging about everything that he and the other cutlery in the castle can accomplish, right? And for me, this sort of interaction resembles it's a very linear interaction, right? Traveling down a road from point A to point B. And this is all right. This is what typically happens when we walk into a coffee shop, right? Frequently, it's what happens when you get to a bar. You get in, you ask for the thing that you want, you receive it, you pay for it, and you walk away. There's nothing wrong with this interaction. However, service to me is a little bit different. Service is holistic, right? When we're walking down that road from point A to point B, you don't really get the whole visual, you don't get to see the landscape. So you might get that cup of coffee, but you miss out on all of those rolling hillsides of pastries that you could have jumped on, right? The babbling brooks of cocktails from all over the world. This landscape photo I actually took myself on a big cross-country bicycle tour that I did a couple of years ago, where I had a lot of time to ponder my surroundings. And I learned a lot about myself, mostly that I like Montana. Never thought I'd like Montana. Now, in service, right, you have the opportunity to surprise, to dazzle. It requires the interaction and the engagement of the guest. The guest has to allow for service to occur. And so when I watch Be Our Guest, right, that's what I see. I see Lumiere bringing Belle into the occasion. Try the gray stuff. It's delicious, right? If she didn't go out on a limb and try it, she would never know that she loves gray stuff, I guess. The guest in every service experience has the opportunity to completely derail, but also completely empower service. Now, I know this because I've been in service quite a while. I've been doing this for the last 8 years. I'm relatively well known in the world. I've been published in several magazines, had the opportunity to shake drinks all over the world. And my colleagues are some of the very best in the business. Some of them are here today, and I'm so thankful to see you all. And even on our best days, when we're totally killing it and the cocktails are flowing and all of our guests have smiles on their faces and drinks in their hands, we still manage to have terrible service interactions. So I know that it can't be just us. Fear not. There are some tips and tricks, right, to guaranteeing that perfect service experience. And at the basis of all of these ideas is something that I've come to term as radical empathy. So radical in this situation means non-traditional, outside of societal norms. So if we think about our normative culture, especially in a capitalist society, it's centered around incentivizing the individual self-interest, right? Acting in the individual self-interest. What's required here for service is a paradigm shift to placing importance and value on the acting on behalf of the collective self-interest. Empathy is the ability to honestly understand the realities of another person's existence. Now, in a service scenario, no matter how much you might have in common with that human being outside of that engagement, there's a wall between you, right from the start. They're your server, and you're the guest. So bridging that gap is necessary in order to be able to engage person to person, right? Now, there's a few ways to do this. Thank you. Thank you is really, really simple. And I don't mean just say thank you upon receiving something. I like to say thank you right off the bat. So what I mean by that is when you walk into a restaurant, typically the first thing you hear is welcome in. And my recommended response there is thank you for having me. Thank you for having me is simple, it's concise, and it does a lot of things. Namely, it dispels any sort of notion of entitlement that a guest might have had upon entering that space. It shows that you're open to receiving service and that you're ready to be wowed, right? Thinking back on Be Our Guest, that's a very spectacular scene, right? Every little piece of plateware in that castle is doing something. There's champagne popping, there's like beer bubbling over, canteens. Mrs. Potts is like ready right after dinner with the tea service. It's really, really nice. Each one of those actors in the castle is a master of their craft. And when you're in a restaurant, it's exactly the same thing. Your server, your bartender, the cooks, the host, every one of those people is trained to be the best that they can be. So, as the good TEDx audience members that you are, continue that curiosity that you're all so well known for. Ask questions. Show that you're invested in the experience, because when you're engaged with what you're eating and drinking, you're actually showing that you're invested in the success of the server. Most of you probably think that you're better than this baby at hiding your emotions when you taste something that's maybe not totally to your liking. But I'm here to tell you that you're so wrong. You look just like this baby tasting a lemon every time you drink another sip of that cocktail. And it's rough. It's rough for me to see that. Giving honest feedback is a huge part of service, right? Say we're having a really nice time. You're really liking my service so far. I'm super nice, right? You're not digging that cocktail. I can tell. As soon as you decide you're gonna tell a little white lie in order to not hurt my feelings, what I see is a break in that honesty, and that maybe you're not really interested in tasting things that taste that good. So if you're not interested in getting a good meal or a good drink, which is the thing that I'm trying to provide to you, I become less and less incentivized to provide that service, right? I become less and less invested in you as a guest. So your quality of service in that situation is gonna go down. Now, this is tough. Emotional engagement is hard. And as a member of the service industry, I'll tell you, it's exhausting. I get home from my weekends and I'm like ready not to talk to another human for a couple of days. But there is a lot to be gained. You might learn something new. So for me, the thing that kept me in this industry was the opportunity to continue to learn about these very, very deep wells of knowledge, right? When it comes to spirits, especially production, distillation, history. There's so much out there. Every single day I learn something new. You have the ability to widen your circle, right? We're humans on the other side there with very full lives, and every time you engage deeply with another person, opportunities arise, right? I've had the opportunity to go all over the world, shake drinks in London, Berlin, New York, Seattle, Mexico. I have met some of the most amazing people through this industry, not only the other ones behind the bar, but some of my guests have become some very, very good friends of mine. And I've been able to participate in their lives as well, whether that's planning a birthday party for their father's 70th, or helping them by donating my services to their philanthropic efforts, right? There's a lot that we can do when we're working together. And last but not least, you're exercising a muscle here every time you exercise empathy, and that's emotional intelligence. And as our emotional intelligence grows, we become better employees, better managers, better parents, right? And just like with exercising a muscle, it becomes easier every time. So you'll start to engage in this empathic activity outside of service scenarios. And when that happens, think about the multiplication of your circle. Think how your thought process might change upon understanding the worlds of your Uber drivers, your teachers, your children, right? The applications here are endless. At your seats, I believe, you received a recipe. I really wanted to give you guys a cocktail, just so you know. But we settled on a recipe. So the recipe here is for one of my favorite cocktails, and that is the daiquiri. Now, most people probably think of the daiquiri as those like very sugary, sweet things you might get on Bourbon Street in New Orleans, but that is simply not the case. They give daiquiris a very bad name. The daiquiri is a classic. It's rum, lime, sugar, that's it. Nice and easy. However, it requires balance, right? Just like every other cocktail. So if something happens there, you put in too much lime juice, it's gonna be too tart. Too much sugar, it's gonna be too sweet. You really can't handle much more than that. Too much rum, it's gonna be too much rum. You're gonna get a little busy. It gets out of whack, right? This is exactly the same when it comes to service scenarios. So that served as my inspiration here for what I believed was the recipe for successful service, and that's openness, trust, and honesty, and a balanced contribution from both the guest and the server. So cocktails, balance, the balance therein has served as my inspiration professionally and personally over the last 8 years or so. And I hope that it can work similarly for you in the future. So cheers, and thank you for having me.